هبت كالريح 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 قوية، شبت كالنار 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 وضية. هبت كالريح 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 قوية، شبت كالنار 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 وضية. سارت بالعزم فتية، طارت كالصقر أبية.
Are good, some of them are hard. But we'll do the best that we can, inshallah. So we'll just pass the mic back and forth. How do you want to do this? You want to start with one? Or?
Yeah.
Want me to get into? All right, so I'm going to put that question up because that's hard. Here's one that might be a little bit easier. The question is, in college, especially in international human rights and comparative law class, what I've noticed is there's basically an ideological war against Islam and the Sharia. And it's very hard to deal with because sometimes it is taught by Muslims who don't even believe in the Sharia. How do we combat this? Excellent question. I think it's actually at the heart of what the point I was trying to make about colonized minds dividing us from what's right. We internalize, like we talk about Islamophobia a lot as if it's coming from non-Muslims towards Muslims, but we forget sometimes about the internalized Islamophobia by which we police ourselves and censor ourselves and change ourselves in order to what we think will please other people. And then this, I think, is a perfect example. That's one side of it, and then the other side of it, just to be fair, is that at the same time, there are people who legitimately have had bad experiences with what they were told was Sharia and may not have been. Allahu Akbar. You know, I know, so my family, I'm half Irish and half Iranian, to explain my name. My Iranian side, my mother came from Iran. And people have had mixed experiences with what they call Sharia there. In Pakistan, similar issues. In Saudi Arabia, similar issues. Sometimes when people act on the Sharia and there are, it's approached in a certain way, and I'm trying to be very open. I'm being very, I'm appreciating the nuance here and the many sides to every story because I'm not a scholar of this subject. But we, of course, need to validate sometimes that people had bad experiences and they have an emotional response to those experiences. And so that's why they may approach it this way. We don't, just because there's a Muslim who says something about this, make excuses for him. Don't just like throw him outside of Islam. Try to correct and guide, but we're not here to pass takfir on people. Now, the Sharia, though, the best way to do it is just to authenticate it with real knowledge. And that's the best opportunity that we have as American Muslims, is that we have a tremendous access to knowledge. While many of us are taught Islam one particular way, we can have and we should have a broader understanding that there are many different choices, there are different schools of thought, that we respect these different opinions as long as they're based on the Quran and Sunnah. And it's crucial, that we understand that. And when we hear misinformation about Islam, if we do have authentic knowledge, if we spent that time correcting those misconceptions, even the ones that we ourselves have, fighting biases and prejudices, even the ones that we have, especially the ones that we have, inshallah, it'll be much easier to talk about Sharia in a positive way. That's why I was actually very proud of ICNA, the Islamic Circle of North America. Their conference this year, they took a really different tack. They really came hard, on the defending Sharia bit, and making sure that they were standing strong on that they weren't backing down off of that. I have problems with the way a lot of different national Muslim organizations do their messaging, but this year I really felt like ICNA was on point, and it's an important thing to that we all do, that we defend this. But the only way you can do that is with information and being educated in this and making sure that you're receiving authentic information as well. Do you want to add to this?
Yeah, a lot of times people approach Islam from the external. The external is what they see going on. What are your examples? Depends on your understanding. This is why my first presentation is how to approach Islam. Islam is a methodology, and that means that there's a method to everything that we do. So knowledge is very important, about this in terms of, what you understand. When we look at it, look for examples. Well, who and what are our primary examples? The Messenger of Allah. He's the source, just like what it said. And to consult the source. Never think, my children, you know, I had grandchildren, he makes a statement about, you know, an issue in Islam, a subject in Islam. They said, well, where did you get it from? Well, this is what I was taught. This is what I was told. I said, no, it's not. That's not the way we understand it. Right, exactly. So what I did when I took them, I took them to the proofs. I said, these are the sources in which we consult, the Quran and the Sunnah. And once that I opened the door, there's a method. They understood. So it's the same thing here. People looking at the state of the Muslim world, the practices is going on. No, we have two sources in which we consult to verify and to substantiate what we believe. Consult those sources. And then once you, like the brother said, once you internalize, then you begin to appreciate, you know, the Sharia. Everybody's throwing that word out. If you're listening to people who have no idea what the Sharia, and they're defining the Sharia for you, and the people outside have no idea what it means, then you're going to be lost and confused.
Just to move on that, another question that somewhat, actually let me do this one first. Question was asked, this is a very presumptuous question. So do you agree? Any question that asks do you agree is somewhat specific. The question is, do you agree that religion is a form of separation? I don't agree, actually. Although, is this your question?
I can hear.
Yeah, you gotta speak up a little bit.
But just stand up a little bit.
He said Islam, Christianity, Judaism, all other religions, they're great things. They understand the good moral code, ethics, and whatnot. But you have to admit it's a form of separation. No matter how you look at it, someone being a Muslim, someone being a Christian, in the eyes of a person, that is different. You can't lie about it, no one else can lie about it. That's what it is. That's why I asked the question, so it's the case.
Sure. Okay. So the way I approach it is a couple ways. I think at a very basic level, to some extent, yes. And sometimes we allow religion to divide us from each other. But there's two ways to look at it. You know, one, I think there is an appeal, and it's part of human nature, I would imagine, to be exclusive in a way. An appeal to extremes, you know, to separate myself from others. And like when we talk about tribalism or classism or whatever it is, these are different manifestations of the same thing. You know, nationalism, I think it's all the same thing. And when you're ethnocentrism, whatever it is. And religion, I think, can, you know, when not checked, can become a similar type of identity. But that's when we put the rules and the lines before the ethics themselves. I think religion, it depends on the religion too. Let me put it that way. It's very important to, if we come at it from an Islamic understanding, we're not judging people about whether they're Muslim or not, but on their actions. You know. Like I said, you know, being Muslim doesn't guarantee you a whole lot unless you really do truly believe. And so, in a way, and the historical example that I can think of, the Siraj of the Prophet ﷺ, is that his faith, his commitment to the principles of Islam and to ethics and to humanity, or I should say his commitment to the ethics led to a commitment to all of humanity. It was because of his Islam and because of his guidance that when the funeral of the Jew went by and he stood for it, he told his companions, is that not a human soul? And so, in a way, I think the highest levels of our religion are really to unite rather than divide. But I understand and respect and agree that unfortunately, religion is used to divide. And so, we, I think, need to have... And I think it's always been that way. And before there were these religions, there were other people, you know, you have gangs, you know, I think, agreed. Absolutely.
respect, you know, I would respect you. I just don't want to come off, you know, I'm not sure.
Sure. No, it's a very complicated issues there, which we probably don't have time to address. But I think that, our sources, Islam being based on sources, and that's one thing that separates our religion from others, is that we have rigorously authenticated sources. The Quran that we look at today, it's a blessing that we have it intact. The Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, as compiled in the Hadith, there's sciences to that, and so we have the sources to believe in. But I think that, when we talk about fundamentalism, that's another, it's just like radicalism, we were just talking about that. That, fundamentalism has been used as another bad word, just like radicalism. But really, if you think about that word, if you're really on the fundamentals of your religion, then that's not divisive. Really, the fundamentals are humanity and dignity and unity. Right. Semantic sense. But there's an agenda to it as well. There's an agenda to how these words are used and how they're deployed against people. Calling someone fundamentalist in a bad way, or calling someone a radical in a bad way, there's an agenda to that. It's a criminalization of ethics in the first case and politics in the second, but both times it comes down to thought. And so, I think we just need to be careful about all those things. But I'd love to have a longer conversation with you about some of those issues. Sure. I would absolutely consider them all human beings. I think I would validate. Yeah, absolutely. No, for sure. I think their humanity is more important than any identity. Identities are, and that was one of the things that in the media coverage after 9/11 and among, or even after Libya last week, the identity that rises to the top is Islam. And there's a conscious effort to do so. You notice that it's Muslims that are expected to apologize for things, not Saudi Arabians, or whatever it is. There's an agenda to which identities are selected, rise above the rest. I'm Muslim, but I'm also, I saw an article by Michael Muhammad Knight the other day. He was talking about, I'm Muslim, but I'm also white. And I'm also heterosexual. And I'm also American. And those all have a lot to do with my history and why I am the way I am today. It's not just because I'm Muslim, so why am I expected to do things because I'm Muslim? I think that on the flip side, in the reverse, that we need to be conscious of that and other people as well. Some of the best people I know might have different ideas on faith, and some of the worst might be, Allah knows. Yeah, that's right. Allah knows best. I mean, it's a tough thing. I understand where you're coming from, but I think that we should and can. We're privileged to have a real pride, in our tradition. And because I really do believe that the more you throw yourself into it, the more that you learn, the more that you study, the more that you act on, the more that you really become a better Muslim, you'll become a better human being. Inshallah.
Just to make it short, when you say religion, it depends on how you define it. In Islam, I understand. I'm just saying. In other words, you say religion divides. Well, what are we saying? Are we saying, are you equating Islam, Christianity? Well, what about communism, socialism?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
I totally agree.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So that's why Islam is extremely careful how it defines itself, and it doesn't define itself as a religion. It says Deen or Islam, and Deen means a way of life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also implies in that the fitra, the natural way of life, the natural way of doing things, like birth. What goes on inside you is a natural phenomenon. It's not a religion. So Islam equates both those phenomena with each other. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He revealed Islam to mankind, He revealed it based on man's nature. The birds, The animals in the sea, they have a way of life that Allah applies to them. The sun, the moon, Allah applies a certain law to them. Allah applies laws to every creation. So if we stick to that, and that's why then when it comes to the social structure, where Allah applies certain laws that we need to follow, based on our nature, Allah would not, again, He would not place upon us a burden beyond our ability to bear. Because the burden, what we deem as a burden is not a burden, because whatever commands that we're given is based on their natural order of the human being and of mankind. So that's what I'm saying. Religion is not defined. Religion comes from the Latin word religios. It's a relation between man and God in that sense. And again, man has injected his particular method and understanding and what that relationship and how it's defined. It's not based on the Torah. It's not based on the gospel. It's not based on Islamic teachings. It's based on what man has injected. That's why man has innovated in respect to that. So that's what I'm saying. In Islam, religion is not a thing of, it's not an issue. It's deen. Deen is a way of life. And that's how we equate what we follow. It's deen fitr. It's a way of life. It's a natural way of life.
Let me we're going to keep it moving because I know we have to pay Ramadan. So I'm happy to talk to you more about this though. These are fascinating things, way above my pay grade, but I'm happy to talk to you more about it, inshallah. I enjoy thinking about these things also. I want to kind of combine the last two questions that we got. One was about, I'll just read it. According to my shaykh, voting is haram because you are voting for a person who goes against the Sharia. So my question is, what is your justification for voting? And I'm going to actually combine that to some extent with the last question, which is, how do you get justice? Which is an important question. And one thing that we deal with all the time. So first, we just kind of did a little caucus over here about the voting issue. I've heard that before, I hear that a lot. And so and I appreciate, I don't know who asked, but may Allah reward you for focusing on what's right in the world. All of our actions should come from that understanding. And just to even care that much means something. So I don't question that at all. On the other hand, no, there are very strong opinions for voting, or at least to allow it. Especially, I was going to say even, but especially in societies that may not be governed to our concept and our conception of Sharia. And so one, I know from our tradition, story of the Prophet Yusuf, the Prophet Joseph, and his relationship that when he actually joined the state apparatus. This was not a Muslim land. This was a religious land. He took a position as, I think it was like an economic position. He managed the stores. He managed the finances of the Amir at the time. And so, I've heard that being used as to say that you can use what your guidance, the amount that you have been given to successfully execute the affairs of state, as much as that's given to you. Voting, of course, is somewhat more broad than that. I would approach it then from a more utilitarian perspective. Let's first make the point about participation in such a government, and then from a utilitarian perspective about voting in particular. I'm certainly not endorsing either of the two main presidential candidates because I don't think either of them are any friend to our community. However, and I'm not going to say that if you don't vote for one, that's a vote for the other. Because that's used as the third, that's why we're still in a two-party system, because everyone says, no, don't vote for a third party, because then it's just like voting for the third. I don't think that's true at all. I think the Republicans and Democrats have way more in common than the Republicans do with Libertarians, or the Democrats do with the Green Party. In fact, I think the third party will have to be a pretty radical one in the way that we re-envision the government's role with people. I'm on camera saying it, but you might see me behind it, so. Now, as far as voting goes, not voting, abstaining from voting, doesn't affect the system. All it does is it takes your voice out of it. And I don't think that voting is, I'm not putting it on a pedestal. I think voting is the bare minimum. There are many other types of civic engagement that you need to do beyond it. Voting is you put someone in office, but it doesn't keep them, on task. And so I think that, we see it as a minimum, inshallah. I don't want to, my reasoning here is by no means a fatwa. That's not my specialty at all. But just having gone through this process myself and gone through similar questions myself, going through this own journey of my own, this is the reasoning that I brought to it, and hopefully inshallah it's helpful.
Yeah, and just to say, these are means in which scholars should really converse over. But the point is that you can get one sheikh to say voting is haram, and then you get other sheikhs to say, well, there's a means in which, we can use voting. And one is that alliances, since we're not under Islamic State, and since we're not ruled by Islamic law, then we have to make the best of this particular world that we're in at this time. And alliances and treaties in some forms are made. It was made during the time of the Prophet ﷺ when he was in Mecca. Tribes and so forth. He made alliances. Now, when I'm not trying to like he said, give fatwa in terms of equating, but we've experienced in our community, local politicians who have assisted us in some tremendous issues. We could have lost the Masjid had it not been for local politicians. Issues like what CAIR does, in terms of NYPD, look at the outcome. Had they not had politicians and lawyers, coming together to deal with these issues and really flushing, the NYPD in their actions. And there's other issues. Sept McKinley, she was very important and instrumental in a lot of issues before they voted her out in Georgia. Imam Siraj, she informed about a lot of things. Look what she did. She went over to assist the Palestinians. She put her life on the line. And these are politicians. So we, in some way, everybody, it doesn't mean we're saying everybody's got to vote, but we must be strategic in how we're seeking to survive. We're talking about survival. So you can say this is that. If it's not totally an issue in terms of how we're going to survive, and can we use the means that help our survival. I remember there was an issue about Ibn Kabir, about the less of the two evils. And that's when the Tatars were oppressing the Muslims. And then when they came with him, he was with his student. They came across a Tatar and he was drunk, and his student began to admonish him and so forth. And Imam Taymiyyah, he stopped him. He said, although we know this is unlawful, but when he's sober, he's persecuting and killing and maiming Muslims. So in his stupid state, in his drunken state, he's calm, peaceful. So, in other words, we gotta learn to use these methods in our midst to survive. So one of the means is some Muslims feel that, look, if we align ourselves with certain politicians, they will help our cause. And we need assistance. While we're not in the Islamic State, we need assistance here, inshallah. So that's my take on it.
That's a great story. Also, I was just going to say that, it's great to get spiritual guidance, but, as long as if there are multiple valid opinions within your madhab or within the Sunni tradition, just ask yourself what brings you closer to Allah Ta'ala, at the end of the day. And that's a personal choice, inshallah. The last question was, how do you get justice? Thank you for the question. It's very broad, and so it's on to the lecture. But I think we addressed it to some extent today, but I'll be more specific in a way. And I'm happy to come back to John Jay and do this another time, or to invite you to some of the initiatives that we do around student organizing. Because to achieve justice like it is to achieve anything requires a strategy. And there's a lot of work done on strategy and what does it mean to develop a strategy, and how do you come to that conclusion. There's a process that you go through. It involves understanding, telling your narrative. It involves understanding power and mapping power around the issue, around injustice, and then finally developing a strategy for how do you make that what is power, or build your own power to achieve the goals that you've set for yourself. And so, that's a long workshop that I'm happy to do with you guys someday. In the meantime, though, to achieving justice, I would leave you with those 5 things that I left before. That really just think about what it is specifically that you'd like to achieve. What represents to you a lack of justice? Because there are just things and there are unjust things. And so if you think that the whole system needs to be changed, then I'm not disagreeing. Then what would that system look like? And once you come up with that, then we can talk about how do you get there. And I think actually it becomes a logical way of finding a straight line in between. But if you think that the system maybe only needs reform, then know what those reforms are. What laws would it take to make that change that you want to see? And then it will find a straight way there. It's much easier to know how to get something when you know what it is tangibly and specifically, physically. You can spell it out in a sentence or two what it is that you want to change, and it's much easier to do. And as Sheikh told me one time, he said, better than all of that is dua. He said, better than all of that is dua, is to be on your faith and to ask in your du'as. He said, he's talking about prayer as a way that is interesting. He said, we're very suggestive in our prayers. In our du'as, we act like we know better than Allah what is best for us. So we give him the demand list. We give a lot to Allah, like, I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this. The Shaykh said, he says, Allah knows what's in your heart. Allah knows what you want. He said, but the best thing to pray for is for Allah to be pleased with you. Because if Allah is pleased with you, then He will give you everything that you desire and more. And more. Pray for God to be pleased with you, inshallah, and all of us. And in that process, by drawing closer to Him, inshallah, I hope that we then see that reflected, that closest to God, we see that reflected then in our own relationships, in our own actions, in our own worship, in our personal lives, as well as our societal ones, in our community lives as well. Those are 2 very different ways to answer the same question, but I think it's connected, and may Allah guide us.
Well, I like to end on this note. In an issue like that, like justice, I like to go and like to refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the source of justice. He's al-adl. And I just want to, maybe if I can read a couple of paragraphs, just to end on that note, to give you a very distinct and explicit understanding about what justice is. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, surely Allah enjoins the doing of justice and of good deeds to others and the giving to the kindred, and He forbids indecency and evil and rebellion. He admonishes you so that you may be mindful. Al-Adl is one of Allah's great names. The meaning of Adl is, the root word is moderation. So Al-Adl is above oppressing or being inequitable to anyone in His decrees and actions. Rather, He grants everyone what is due to Him. He puts everything in its right place. Nothing ensues from Him except justice. He is the one who does whatever He pleases, and His decree regarding His servant is carried out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and the word of your Lord has been accomplished truly and justly. There is none who can change His word, and He is the hearing and the knowing. He glory and exaltation to Him enjoins justice and equity and says the following in Surah Nisa, and that when you judge among people, you should judge with justice. Surely Allah admonish you with what is excellent. Surely Allah is seeing here. And the last, the avenue to knowing Allah al-Adl is discussed by Al-Ghazali, who concludes that none will ever realize who al-Adl really is except after he realizes His Adl, His justice. And none can ever know His justice without knowing His favors. If one wishes to absorb the meaning of such a description, he has to be fully acquainted with the actions of the Almighty from the highest of high heavens to the lowest point on earth. So if he does not find in the creation of mercy any variation, he looks again and sees no weakness in it. Then, if he looks one more time and his vision returns to him disappointed and humbled after being dazzled by the beauty of the divine perplexed about the justice and perfection of the order in his creation. He will then and only then comprehend one of the meanings implied in the justice and equity of Allah Almighty, who has created everything in existence, the bodies and the souls, the perfect among them and the imperfect, and given everything its form, and by doing it, he is the most gracious. Then he placed everything in an appropriate place, hence, that is justice. So I like to lead with that point, because justice is found from Allah within you, and we judge, we are guided. Remember, we're guided by scruples, principles. You don't make it up. You just follow this direction, and inshallah you see. And it starts with your family. Your father, your mother. It starts with your family, and how you enact that justice within your family is how you would relate. Remember, the Prophet ﷺ said to be kind to your neighbors, Muslim anonymous. That is part of faith.
Yeah, I mean, so I got a question or thought? Oh yeah, just for the sake of any Department of Justice employees that may be watching this video on YouTube. Although I said that I pretend to be a lawyer,
Disclaimer, right?
I was kidding. So I get very cavalier about these jokes that I make sometimes, so just in case, if they try to lock me up for pretending to be a lawyer, then you guys better start like a Twitter hashtag for me or something, because that would be absurd. So, well, and thank you, Hisham. Jazakumullah khair for your time. I know we're going to do they have a video that they wanted to show, but just in the meantime, I wanted to end and really pray that may Allah bless you guys and reward you for everything that you're doing, and can guide us all and guide us to justice and to being justice ourselves. And if there's anything that I can help with and Brother Ali can help with moving forward, I think I'm pretty easy to find. Just please, just a phone call away or an email away. And so please keep in touch with us and keep us in your prayers. If we said anything wrong, it's purely our own fault. If we said anything right, it's by Allah's guidance. And so please forgive us for any way that we've offended you, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
هبت كالريح قوية، شبت كالنار وضية. هبت كالريح قوية، شبت كالنار وضية. سارت بالعزم فتية، طارت كالصقر أبية.